Okay, thank you. So this is the training subcommittee. Today is February 3rd. It is 5:27 and we're going to get off and running. So welcome. I appreciate obviously the good, robust, deep conversation that was being held in the other committee meetings. So I appreciate you wanting to come to this one, and I won't, unless Commissioner Prospero talks a lot, we'll try to get you out of here before 8 o'clock tonight. So just hopefully you got a chance to see the agenda that got sent out this morning. And also the minutes from the last session are not quite completed yet. So just want to see if there's any review or thoughts on the minutes. If you got to take a chance to look at from December 16th, which was when we had the guests from CIT, Sergeant Stuck, and what's the woman, Miss Waters, Jessica Waters. That was when they were both here. So if you haven't had a chance to look at those or review them, we can certainly do it next time when we get the other minutes as well. So we can certainly postpone that. I don't see anyone from the youth committee unless Commissioner Prospero, you were at a meeting and would like to offer any thoughts from the youth committee's meeting.
Yeah, just real quick, they're working on having their own listening sessions. They'd like to have a listening session with just youth in general. Any youth out there that have that just have any thoughts about their interactions with law enforcement, positive or negative, and then they want to have one or two specific to SROs. That's with the safety school safety subcommittee. They'd have to like one or two. They're going to be smaller. They want to be able to get again the experiences that students have had with SROs in schools, and again, both good and bad. So they're trying to get two, but they really need support from y'all's shop, the Lankin group, to be able to support them for that. They tried earlier, but they're having trouble recruiting and marketing and all that stuff. So Siobhan, she's on it. So hopefully they'll be able to get something early March is their timetable to do that at that time.
Great, thank you. Just out of curiosity, did they have any thoughts or concerns about the, or even do they know about the listening session that was held with the SROs, and did they, I don't think they participated, maybe they participated, but did they have any thoughts at all on maybe what they heard from that session or heard about that session?
Yes, actually on Saturdays was when we meet Saturday morning. Okay. It was fairly still fresh on their minds. And so, yeah, like a lot of us, right? Interesting, heard some information that they hadn't heard from the past, other stuff that was, yeah, we get that. One comment was, and I did bring that up on the school safety, is that not much talked about racial equity or racial issues, more just in general. And then one of the topics was about the experiences with the what is that called? The where civilians can go and interact or see what the life of a police officer is. What do they call those? Civilian. Mariana, do you know what I'm talking about? where they go like once a week, civilians, and law enforcement kind of teaches them what's going on. Well, there was one lady, two ladies that talked about it. Sorry?
The civilian training
academy that what you're referring to.
Yeah, the academy, is that what they call it?
Academy, yeah.
Community academy, or I'm not sure the
exact name. Yeah, I forget the name it was, but two of them went through it. One had a horrible experience, right? Another one thought it was great. But they realized when they saw it, it's like, is it because one was a Latina from immigrant background, and then the other one was appeared to be a white woman, possibly middle class. So they're wondering if that's something that we should look into.
I happen to be in that training actually. So I could see where she would have had a issue, a problem. So it was kind of scary on a few I can see where minorities would have a problem with that training. So, and be uncomfortable.
Is there anything specific that comes to mind, or just the tone in general, or?
A lot comes to mind.
Okay.
So I just think maybe it needs to be revamped
Hmm.
and not have so many people in there. And I think they need to address, the issues that were asked. Like the woman who said that she had a problem, she walked out. She did ask like a few questions and they were never answered. So
So you said she walked out?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
She was like on the verge of tears. It was, yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
So you were in that same exact class that she was in then?
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize that. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, whoa.
Gotcha.
Okay.
yeah. And I've gone through some of those trainings in the past, and in the past, a lot of it is because those who create these trainings are working from a point of view of privilege, and they don't understand that they're putting things that the minority groups see like, wow, wait, why are all the bad guys black, brown, and
Right.
all the heroes are white cops and stuff like that, and it, again, may not be done on purpose, but it's an issue. And so, so I don't know if it was something like that may have been it.
Yes.
Okay. And that's something this committee hasn't really talked about, was the civilian police academy, where I'm not quite sure what it's entitled in Salt Lake. But maybe at some point we could, if that's of interest to the committee, to put that on the list of things to take a look at. Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And then just a quick brief ask to the commissioners regarding the partner pair program and the safety briefing that the chief had talked about before. I met with the chief on Friday, and one of the things he said was that he had sent out a doodle poll or something so that folks could sign up. So I just want to check with you to see if you've either received it and or signed up if you were interested for either the safety briefing or that partner pair component.
I either have not received it or I have not seen it.
I haven't received it either. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, same here.
Okay.
I think it's Larry's fault.
Right.
Commissioners, I'll check with the chief again and touch back bases with him.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Yeah, because I thought I heard him say he sent it out at least a week, maybe 2 weeks ago. So I'm not sure what might have happened with that. So yeah, please just let us know and have him resend it if that needs to be the case. Okay, so just wanted the next kind of thing on the agenda was just wanted to hear from you your thoughts on the listening sessions, just in general. Obviously Larry's here; he was the master facilitator of that, and I thought he did a masterful job. But would love to hear your thoughts on just, yeah, I mean it was okay, but would love to hear your thoughts on maybe what you heard or what you didn't hear, or just in general your thoughts on whether you think it was a beneficial process for you as commissioners, and did you hear from the communities that you wanted to hear from?
And Dante, not to interfere with the commissioner's comments, but if you'd like, I can share some data with the group.
Okay.
From the listening sessions, but they can wait until.
Okay, let's see if we can get some raw responses before we go with the data. Because right now I have most of the quiet folks on the call, so that gives me a chance to just target them. So.
Okay, I guess I'll go. Moises, stop it. Don't point at me. No. I think, well, I actually had a lot of text messages, quite a bit from my community. One of which she said that she had stayed on and her call was never picked up. I don't know that that's the case, but she wanted to directly, speak about the issues happening within the Native communities. And it's basically kind of what I've already expressed, those triggers and generational trauma in forms of engaging with police officer. That's what she was basically going to bring up. What steps are going to be taken in place to comfort our Native communities. Because again, her and I talked about it, and we talked about that generational trauma of our people being gathered up by law enforcement and taken to these residential boarding schools. And she also talked about the trigger of, growing up and her family members saying, hide from the police. And like I also expressed, when I see a police officer, I freeze and but I don't want to say that to my kids. But how are we going to address that here in the Valley? How are we going to support our Native families? Because also is another thing that was brought up was being visible. We're still invisible. Our Native community is still being invisible. I wanted to bring that up in our SRO committee, but because I've seen it. I worked in the school district. I see our Native students being engaged with SROs, and they think that they're Latina, students, which they're not. For me, I've also been passed by as being they would think I'm a Latina. I'm not. No, I'm Native American. I'm Diné. And when they say, well, what's Diné? Well, it's Navajo. So I really wanted to see more. So I'd like to know more, Larry, like what if there were Native participants in that listening session, because again, in 2010, I believe in the census here in the Salt Lake Valley, there's over 10,000 Native families, and that was that's in 2010. So I know for a fact we're coming. We're still coming. More and more are still coming. So, but I don't want that invisibility to be present today.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Great points. Great points. And well, I won't even make any comments yet. I'll wait till the rest of the commissioners offer their thoughts.
So I had a lot of feedback from community. And number one, a lot of them really liked the fact that there were so many different ways that they could engage, whether it was through Facebook or through calling or texting. So they really liked the multiple ways that people could engage. One of the things that they mentioned was that they asked for was if there was going to be an opportunity for communities themselves, meaning each of our different ethnic communities, to engage in its own listening session, because they felt that the listening session was great, but as they were listening, there was very little that was brought up about equity. There was a lot about policing in general, but not necessarily equity in policing. And so they were wondering if we would be having sessions that would be with the individual communities, to give them an opportunity to engage in that way. But that was probably the two main things that came out, at least that they were texting me about in regards to the listening session. Oh, and the fact that why nobody responded. I was like, it's a listening session. Well,
Very unnatural.
what's the purpose of this session? No one responded to us. So I did tell them that there is going to be a response, and that we'll have that up for them to be able to see. So different questions, whether they engaged in, whether they sent them in or emailed them in, that eventually those will get answered.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And Commissioner, I'll be happy to follow up with you, because I would be very interested in facilitating listening sessions for different communities that would like to do so. So I'm happy to work with you on that.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Our quietest commissioner, Commissioner Prospero. I see you getting ready to speak.
I'm trying to be quiet so others could say. But just my boss lady, she told me she tried to answer some of those when she was answering. locations, because we were extremely disappointed that there was 0 Glendale Poplar Grove peeps in there when we first saw it, and so I was upset that we were not representing. But she said that she was trying to, and right when she hit it, it just stopped, and so I was surprised that you couldn't continue to answer those questions even after the time.
Yeah, that's a limitation of that particular platform, is that you can only sort of activate one poll at a time to make it easier to get the responses to be consistent, A, B, C, D, et cetera. I will say that quite a few people on the phone said they were in Glendale or Poplar Grove. So even though that didn't show up on the text responses, there were people from Glendale and Poplar Grove on the phone.
That was my only comment.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Hawkins, Commissioner Suarez, Commissioner Davis, I'm not sure if you were able to listen to the listening sessions. And I want to just pause for just a second and say, really, really happy that Commissioner Davis can be here with us. He's still recovering from COVID. So appreciate his presence and his real engagement in this at this time.
I did hear the listening session, and the one issue that was major for me was the issue of distinguishing between equity and equality. And I suppose at some point we'll do that again.
Great point. Thank you. And as we got into it, and I didn't interrupt to do anything, but I thought we could have at least provided some level of definition of what equity is or what racial equity is, so folks would know at least the commission's perspective on what that looks like, and maybe give them a different prompt to be responsive to that question.
Whoa. I'm sorry, I'm echoing.
That to us.
You're good.
So I was asked, when are we going to release the answers? Because there were so many questions. They wanted to know those answers like right away, like within a week, because there's some very good questions. And so I had no answer for them.
We've I think gotten to a place of having all of them sort of compiled, and there's just a lot of people within the city and within the department that we'd like to make sure are included in the answers to make sure they're fully accurate. So I'm reluctant to give a specific date, but I know that we're working, very diligently to try to get those questions answered as quickly as we can and to post them publicly.
Okay. And they were very happy to see like the chief and the mayor there participating or listening, I should say. I also heard some people wanted it a little bit longer because they felt that there are more questions out there. So, and the people who did ask the questions, I think they had some great questions. I mean, I think they were sharing how they felt, and they felt safe enough. Well, some of them felt safe enough to ask those questions. And seeing the commission as with a lot of minorities, they were very pleased about that also. That's what I heard.
And I would also just share that internally we've discussed a second a second iteration of this more fully public event later in the process, at the point where the public can hear more about what the commission is considering recommending and then give their feedback. Nothing is set in stone, nothing scheduled, but that has been discussed by the team.
Okay, thank you.
Good to see you, Commissioner Andrew Weirden. The question is just generally thoughts on the listening sessions, how you thought it went, or Did you hear what you would have liked to hear as a commissioner? Was it beneficial to you? Did you hear from the communities that you expected to? Just kind of general thought.
I was impressed, first off, with how professionally it was managed. I compliment Larry on facilitating. I would like to have heard more from communities of color about our specific charge. I understand it's a challenge to capture that, right? And I did hear some of that as you sift through things that were being said. So there was some value directly to us. I just shared a page full of notes with the other subcommittee, which is why I'm coming here 45 minutes late, because I just spoke the whole time. But a couple of takeaways for me were hearing the positives that were stated about the department seemed to come with an explanation that it was because the officers were able to take time to address the issue. They were able to take time to de-escalate or hear what was being said. And I know, I think that's important for us to talk about as a commission as the department struggles to fill, vacancies and get back up to staffing to be able to meet that. But to me, good policing is about listening and taking the time to overcome challenges in your conversation. And I think that's particularly important for us as or for law enforcement working with communities of color where there is and can be so much mistrust, to actually take that time to fill that gap. I heard things about just the overall legitimacy of policing. How much does the community actually feel they can trust the department to actually solve a problem, right? And I think that it's tough to unravel that because sometimes asking questions of a community that doesn't feel safe answering those questions gets in the way of getting the information that you need. So I heard Tanya talking a little bit about creating that safe environment and starting to open that up. I would love to have more sessions like this. We unravel that and we continue to target the folks that we want to hear from. And I think too that we'll get better as commissioners at reaching out to our communities to tune in as well, because I know you all advertised it and we all have a responsibility to bring it. I have more, but you can see Mo is rolling his eyes, so I will yield the floor to other people to have a conversation. But overall, I thought it was good, even though you have to dig a little deeper to get some information.
Thank you. We've already been being hard on Commissioner Prospero, so you're right on time. But no, thank you. And Chief Dowd, I'll offer you the opportunity to see if there's anything that you heard that was impactful to you or beneficial as you sit here and help us work through this charge of the commission.
Yeah, I was shocked and ashamed at some of the things I was hearing coming from the community of what they've seen from us. And the one that really shocked me, and I know you talked a little bit about it at the beginning of your meeting, but I think it really informs the discussion of how we're training our officers, because the Citizens Academy is trained by the same people using the same curriculum that we train our recruits. And if they're teaching from that position of privilege and not being able to see through that blindness, this commission really needs to help us understand how we fight through that, because that's what this subcommittee right here is all about, is about training. And if we're training our community members and they walk out afraid and fearful and disgusted, that's wrong, and we need to fix that. So that was the one thing I took away from that, the listening session.
Hey, Chief Dow, I'll work with you on that. Okay. Oh, somebody else too. He raised his hand.
Steve-O too.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, Commissioner Hawkins, do you know if, I think you said it was a woman, the woman who walked out of the Citizens Academy, ever heard back from anyone about her concerns? Or did she express them outside of the academy, or how did that?
You know, I don't know. She expressed them because there was another participant there that went after her to see if she's okay, and she was expressing how she felt,
Mhm.
but I don't think she's ever heard anything back.
Okay.
I don't think it was addressed.
When was this academy?
Last it was in the spring,
Spring of
last spring,
2020?
right
Okay.
before COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and I guess my general comments would be very similar to everyone. I don't think we really heard enough comments, or many comments, certainly not a majority of comments, that were related to racial equity. Many were related to lots of other things, certainly important things, but were not specifically related to racial equity, certainly as it relates to the communities that we're here trying to ensure that we're best serving. So, I think another, as Larry described, another listening session might be beneficial. If we could do, if we were in person, we could just go into the community in the rec center or the community, the community center and say, this is for you, we're listening. It's a little harder on a Zoom call. So, but I think if we could in fact do something that's a little more targeted, I would imagine that we would get more response in that regard from the communities we really wanted to hear from. So I won't put Larry on the spot, but I know that's in conversation. So we recognize the deficit of some of the information received as it related to the specific work of this commission.
Absolutely. Dante, do you want me to share anything as far as results? I know you've got a lot to cover, so.
Yeah, could we just send it out? I'm not sure that reviewing it at this particular point would be take us anywhere, but.
Yeah, we will send a compiled report.
Okay, well, that'd be great. That'd be great. Next piece on the agenda is a question for you. We've talked around this, and so had a conversation with Josh and the policies subcommittee, but this committee's kind of talked around it as it relates to recruitment and the hiring process. Certainly now that the budget has been released in a way that will allow the Salt Lake City PD to have another class or an upcoming class, whenever that may be. Policies and practices is swamped. And that's not to say that we aren't either, don't have a lot on our plate. But as we have put together, I think, our initial 3 recommendations, knowing there's certainly lots of other places we want to go, is the idea of recruitment and the hiring process something that this committee would like to take a look at? And maybe think about it. I don't know that I need a specific yes answer right now, but think about it, because, who we recruit reflects who is going to be on the street and what those interactions are. And so how do we best recruit? How do we best utilize a process that ensures we get the best type of officer that is reflective of, a whole human being who is aware of the communities that he or she is serving? So that process is absolutely important, I would suggest.
Do you mean as a part of the training subcommittee, or as a whole commission?
No, as a part of the training subcommittee. Would it be something of interest to take on or offer some thoughts and recommendations from this committee on the hiring, the targeted, well, I'll just call it recruitment process and the hiring process?
To me, it's a critical area, and we discussed it in the policy committee, and Josh said that he would be taking it, Dante, so.
Oh, it was a given, okay.
He said you and Mo would co-chair that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know where it fits better. That other committee is crazy busy,
Right.
Is to, I do think as a result of that, this issue has kind of been pushed down in priority and not addressed.
I will say that it's possible we could reconstitute that as a subcommittee. I mean, it was originally a subcommittee, and we just decided that the membership was such that, it made more sense to collapse it in. But, if there's reason to separate it out, then, that could be something we'd support, as in facilitate.
I believe this is one of the biggest issues when it comes to long-term changing of culture in an institution, and it's not that it's bad, but we need a different perspective, and it's not just about bringing different ethnic, racial minorities and different genders and so forth, but also just a different type of temperament, somebody that's ready to work with community rather than like what I was in the military, not ready to work in community. I was a infantry machine gunner, and then you're gonna put me into this. It's a very different point of view. And so instead of having to switch the head and then try to make you into a community officer and yet still be able to do the things that sometimes you have to do, that recruitment is just so huge. And that's why I always was hoping that we'd have talk with HR or something. And that's why I wanted it to be a different subcommittee. But because I would like to have some input in that, I would hate to see it go to another subcommittee, because then I wouldn't be able to do it, because we're ready with those other two, with this one and that riffraff Siobhan. So I would love it if we could keep it here. But yeah, that's my view.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree. I think it's important, but I think perhaps this committee ought to deal with it.
You cut out at the very end, Commissioner Davis. You think this committee ought to?
The committee ought to be the one to deal with it. It ought to stay here.
Okay, thank you. I see head nods. Oh, okay, great. So thank you, ma'am. So what I will do is see if I can get some version of the process of hiring. I mean, you've heard me talk about having community members on the interview panels, things like that. And so I'll see if I can get some spreadsheet or description of what the process is before they ever get to, doing a psych eval or doing a PT test or anything like that. But just the interview process itself, or the hiring process. So maybe that would allow us to take a look and see if there are other thoughts on the process itself. And then, to your point, I think somebody have a conversation with HR. Is it just HR? And Chief, maybe you can answer the question. Is it just HR that does the recruiting? Is it just a blanket application process is now open and the test is on this date and show up? Is there any targeted effort? I think would be helpful to know what that outreach process is, the recruitment process is, before we really step into, well, we have to know what is before we can talk about what could or should be.
We have a pretty detailed recruitment plan that we can get you. And
Okay.
we do work hand in hand with HR. A lot of it falls to them, but some of it falls to us. And I'm happy to report this class we're hiring on February 22nd is 30% minority. So we're moving in the right direction. But we always need more help with that. So yeah, and I think this committee is where that topic belongs, because a lot of the hiring process is run by the training unit. So
Great. So the incoming class is already set for February? Okay. And that's the only class that's currently budgeted?
for the end of this fiscal year, we're planning on, if we get our money restored, we'll probably run another class in July. So we're recruiting for that class right now. I think we have 600 and some odd applicants right now for that class.
Okay. Okay, that's great.
Chief Doubt, just a question about diversity. How many of them are going to be allowed to have full beards?
Oh, man.
Come on now. Look at this.
You know, if you come over and work for us, I'll give you an exception. How about that?
Oh my gosh.
You don't, Chief, you don't want that. That's-
Put this on a recruitment flyer.
I'm gonna check with Colette and see if there's a permanent mute button.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Chief, the HR that you're referencing, is that police department HR or is that main city, Salt Lake City HR?
You're muted, Chief. That's $1.
That's $1. The way the city runs it is the city has their own human resources department, and then they have assigned a consultant to the police department. So that's how that works.
And then there's also, sorry, Dante, there's also crossover with Civil Service Commission for like the integrity of that testing process.
The Civil Service Commission was repealed in December, so we don't have a civil service anymore.
Okay. Okay, so it's purely the process from HR and internal recruitment.
Yeah, we're still working on those procedures to do the hiring, the competitive hiring, but the HR is helping us work through that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Chief, if you could get that to us in the next couple of weeks, I think that would be great to take a look at that. And then back to the discussion of having police officers on not just the commission, but on the subcommittees. And so in conversation with the chief, we had a meeting with the chief for a number of reasons last Friday, and the assistant chiefs raised the idea or the question of his thoughts on that possibility. And I think you've all seen Commissioner Kamal's recommendation for having officers on the commission non-voting. And so my thought was to have 2 officers per subcommittee, not just 2 for an entire commission, and then there ends up to be 1 sitting somewhere feeling tokenized, but having 2 officers per subcommittee, not as voting members, but to be a part of this conversation as needed, and not command staff officers or lieutenants or that kind of, but street officers who are really on patrol. Because I would suggest that there is a difference of opinion between sometimes command staff and patrol officers. And that's not good or bad, it just is. And so I think we might, if that level of them hearing us and us hearing them, that level of trust begins to be built, which may take a moment, to get their feedback and hear from you. Because I would also suggest that patrol officers are going to talk to each other in a different way. And so if they are hearing your authenticity without hate and do away with the police department, it might send a different message as conversations happen. And also I think it would be important, because as I've said before, we can't just drop a bookload of recommendations on folks and think it's going to be accepted and digested if they've had no involvement in any of the conversation. And so that's my recommendation. The chief said he would check in with his patrol officers and see who or how many would be willing to participate on the subcommittees. And so the first opportunity to bring those officers to the full commission would be the next full commission meeting, which I think is the 13th, to just introduce them, get them understood and maybe up to speed of what some of the committees are doing. And then the following time for the subcommittees, those officers would attend the subcommittee meeting.
You mean February 10th for the next full commission, week from tonight?
Okay, yes, February 10th. Thank you.
Pretty sure that's $1, Dante.
Gotcha. Do you take Venmo? So that's my recommendation. That was the chief thought it was fine. The others, both Josh and Siobhan, agreed with the idea. And I'm happy to have Chief Dowd offer his thoughts on that, but also really want to hear from you, because there's a couple of commissioners who just absolutely don't like that idea. And I just think that's a recipe for not really being able to do our best work if we can't hear from the folks who will be most impacted by what we do, whether we necessarily agree with them or not. But I think hearing is important. So I'll just pause.
I like the idea and think it would be the best way for us to meaningfully get anything done. So, and to have more than one person, 2 people per subcommittee is certainly more realistic than having just one.
Thank you, Reverend. Other thoughts?
I agree with the Reverend. So I think we need the 2 officers in each subcommittee.
Thank you.
Your turn.
I think it would be not only nice to have the officers, but also perhaps officers that live in Salt Lake City to have some priority to be on these committees, because working and living in the community, it'd be nice to hear from their perspective.
Great point. Thank you.
I'm way in favor. I mentioned it before, but also to your report that we had a very positive conversation about the same issue in the policy and practice subcommittee. So, you know, not to steal your thunder or anything for reporting later, but it was a good discussion over there. Very, very favorable.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Kaili, I saw you unmute.
I like the idea, but I do feel that it's important for us to bring somebody on that already understands racial equity in policing, so that we are not spending any time having to educate them about what that is. And so if we had a say in who those 2 individuals might be, but I would really love to make sure that they have at least a basic understanding of what racial equity is, so that we can start from there and not have to go backwards and restart.
That's a great point. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Smith, please.
I'm always about definitely collaborating, but also educating. And I think if there's the idea of 2, I think what Commissioner Anna Pesci is saying, yes, definitely have one, but the other, again, I don't think it's really going backwards because we're educating. I mean, that's the only way we can continuously evolve. That when we talk about allies, you know, there's what is white allies? We're still talking about that today and moving forward in that sense. So having someone that doesn't have that understanding, I think, is also important, because if we can educate that person then can go in an area where another officer that doesn't have that understanding, that officer can then go and educate that person. So if we can make one person understand that, then it can go on and flourish in that sense. So I think, you know, I'm definitely for this as well. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate all the comments. I do. And we certainly don't want, and I can't imagine the chief would select someone who doesn't believe in this concept. They may be a little unsure what the process brings or will mean to them on the street, but I can't imagine, nor would we allow someone who was going to be an obstructionist to sit and engage with us. That just isn't going to happen. So to what level somebody understands equity, that's a great question. I think they have to, at the very least, be open to hearing what you have to say, what the commission has to say. And to your point, Commissioner Smith, maybe they will learn and be able to take that message back in a way that they can't do it now. We would hope that they are somewhat versed in the idea of, or comfortable enough to have a conversation about race. And that's usually the biggest hurdle to start with, is just being comfortable and having a conversation about race. So it sounds like, I think it's beyond the consensus. We have a unanimity that that would be a good idea, or at least an acceptable idea, to have 2 officers on this subcommittee. So I will be sure to get back to the other 2, both Josh and Siobhan, and double check that, and then report back to the chief that it's a go from our side. And so we will hope that and expect that he can have at least 6 officers there next Wednesday at the full commission meeting, so they can be introduced to us, and you can be introduced to them. So thank you for that. Thank you. To the draft recommendations that we've put together and submitted, at least in draft form, to the council and the mayor. Want to see, well, one, again, in that conversation that I had with the chief and Chief Dowd and a couple of others, he noted just one very specific thing that was, that we have in here that he said is incorrect and described why, which was around the recommendation, the recommendation is create a process for targeted outreach, this is for the FTOs, to officers of color, and provide incentives to participate in the program. The chief said that there are already incentives in the sense that are paid overtime, and that they also receive, and I forget what he called it, chief, essentially professional development, not points, but professional development support for, go ahead.
It is points. It's called career path points. And when they get those so many points, they get a certain amount of money. So it's tied to compensation as well.
Okay, thank you. So those are the 2 incentives that he described. So we couldn't, so when we say to provide incentives, they already have those 2 incentives. I guess I would ask you, are those the right incentives for people of color to want to engage? Are there other incentives that can be, I don't know, that might encourage more folks of color to want to participate in the FTO program, or any other specialty, from SWAT to K9 to you pick it, but specifically FTO program? Are there any other incentives that you think would be beneficial to encouraging folks of color to participate and apply? Which then still begs the question of what is the culture that we're asking folks to come into? So, I mean, I understand there's a distinction in that question, but just in terms of incentives and our recommendation.
Chief, did you say that the points are for compensation, or is it also for promotion?
It's just for compensation, but to be an FTO also, that helps expand your resume and get you, a better promotional rate anyway, even though you don't get points for promotion.
But it creates it assists in the pathway for a promotion if that's what you're seeking. I think that's really important, right? Not just recruitment, retention, and promotion. We need that latter one as well for certain groups to move up that ladder.
Okay.
Right now, I can't think of anything, but
right, and this is just being thrown at you to say, give me some examples or give me some thoughts, but just think about what other incentives you might think are beneficial or encouragement for folks of color to want to participate in the FTO program, because there are those 2 already related to pay. Okay. So otherwise, there were no other comments around our recommendations that anything we provided in here was incorrect or misstated in any way. So what I'd ask you is, where are we in the language? and I'll just read the recommendations again for you. First one related to FTOs, which there are out of 67 currently, 2 are Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and 4 are Latino. So the recommendation was create a process for targeted outreach to officers of color. And if we subtract the incentives piece, officers of color to participate in the program. That's recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 is around CIT, the Crisis Intervention Team. Essentially, the mantra of everybody's CIT certified is not correct. And so the recommendation, there were 4 of these, require CIT recertification for all officers, because after you've been out of the academy for 2 years, it's voluntary. Require certification for all lateral hires, because currently now they don't know who has been certified or who is currently certified. Increase the budget to complete this priority. And the last piece of this is increase the budget to CIT specifically to provide for more officers to cover more than one shift and have staffing sufficient to cover when officers are unable to work their shift. Because if you remember, Sergeant Stuck said out of the 4 current officers in the program, 3 were out on leave for whatever reason. So there was only 1 available to work any shift. So those were the 4 recommendations under CIT.
Dante, can I just speak to that really quick? I just want to tell the committee, we are taking your draft recommendations. We aren't waiting for you guys to publish your report. I actually issued the order today to get everybody recertified by the end of the year. So everybody has to get recertified. All the laterals have to go through an academy. That I issued that order today. But we do need budget to make that happen. So we still need your help with that. But like I said, we're not waiting for you guys to publish a report. When we see something that's a great idea, we're pushing forward with it. So that's happening.
That's beautiful, Chief. Thank you for letting us know. And I would suggest next week at the full commission meeting, I'll ask you to say that and just kind of report on that. I think that's great. So kudos to you and kudos to the commissioners for this work. So that hopefully is an example that some things are actually changing based on your work. So thank you, Chief.
But that is not a good example of bureaucracy. I think we need to work on the slow process to show that we're good bureaucrats. Come on, Chief. Come on.
Can I get mute button? Let me find that mute. Hold on.
Yeah, we're still looking for Coletta to get that permanent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I just comment on those, on the CIT program and the funding, right?
Yes, sir.
As I recall, there were 2 detectives working in there. I think there were some medical issues about the other folks being there. Can we, as a training group, think about where we want that recommendation to be? Because I think it's going to take a while, even once the department gets the money, to bring in new recruits and get them spun up so that they can get out and operate on the street. So I think there's going to be some prioritization that's critical in the department between now and then about what those key positions are. So maybe we could think as a training unit and as a commission or training subcommittee and as a commission about how much emphasis to put on that CIT detective position for different times of the day as a patrol resource, and how much of a resource that could be, right? Because that could really be a return on the investment to reduce patrol calls in the long run, which might help end this problem or reduce the impact of the problem. But anyway, I think in addition to our other recommendations, how much of an emphasis to put on that might be valuable. That and a mute button for Dr. Prospero.
Right. No, so that's great. So then how would you phrase that in the term of a draft recommendation?
Well, I think we need to have some discussion about whether this group agrees with that, but assuming that it's an emphasis on the CIT detective position to support patrol to deliver a higher quality of product for mental health intervention. But I think we need to decide. I would like to emphasize that, but what I don't have, and Chief Dowd obviously has a better perspective, is how this looks in the whole department, right? And what other areas might we want to prioritize. So I don't want to jump the gun and try to make that action, but I could see there being value in that area.
So additional officers to work on one shift as well as additional officers to cover all shifts? Is that a paraphrasing of what you're suggesting to think about?
So by the time the department gets back up to full staff to be able to fulfill all of those, even the current allocations to meet that day shift need, it's going to take some time. And I would like to see that on different shifts. And I'm trying to remember back to the data we saw about the number of CIT calls. I think it was day shift and then afternoon shift.
Right.
The drop off on graveyards. Yeah. So I would like to see that resource to support the afternoon shift officers as well.
Okay.
But that can't wait. From my perspective, that can't wait till the end as we prioritize where those officers go. Because obviously they're putting an emphasis on patrol right now because there's a huge need to make that call load. If I'm paraphrasing that close to correctly, Chief. Anyway, I think that could be part of the recommendation.
Okay, so if the number 4th bullet is increase the budget to CIT to provide for more officers to cover more than one shift, does that speak to what you're describing?
Maybe something about finding a balance between funding those positions while still supporting patrol.
Okay. Oh, I see. You're not, okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding. You're not, in supporting patrol, you're not suggesting taking money away from patrol to then support CIT more officers, but essentially doing both.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how to accomplish it. And I think I don't even know if any other commissioner even agrees with me on this, but I think that support of those CIT detectives for patrol officers in meeting the needs of the mental health calls that come in could be prioritized over backfilling other areas of the department as more resources come in and they're able to meet the call. Right. So in other words, weight that more heavily than, I don't know, running the CIT Academy. I don't know what that might look like. Anyway, anybody tracking? I'll just speak.
I'm trying to understand you, Steve. That's why I don't know if I agree with you, because I don't understand exactly what you're saying. So you're saying as money comes in, they're going to try to fill in those patrol, right? Because we're so low. But that may then take away from budgeting for the CIT training?
No, not the. I'm talking about the actual detectives who have a caseload to support people in the community with mental illness, who are
like that CIT team or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Continuous response for the department, right? So, so seemingly, if there were more of those detectives, they could handle those types of calls, which may reduce patrol's call load.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, as we're talking about growing that department, there's going to be this interim period where, unless we make it a priority, they're not going to be able to backfill those detective sergeant or positions, and then nor put them onto other shifts. So I'm suggesting that in addition to recommending that there are additional resources put to that we also make it a priority earlier, strengthen that area. That come out better that time? Still see you got the wrinkled faces. I'll work on my recommendation and come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure, Steve.
Okay, and then finally, number 3, excuse me, the training concerns related to equity, implicit bias, and community policing curriculum in the academy and the in-service. First of 4 components, require Salt Lake City community-based trainers of color to be part of the academy and the in-service training team. Require a curriculum that is a best practice and that is co-created. And Captain Morcus was on the call on Friday, and his question specifically was, are you talking about the entire academy curriculum, which is the state-based post-academy, or are you only talking about well, at this point, it's 4 hours of fair and biased policing, which I think we're all in agreement that's not enough. But it would be that component of the academy's training that would be co-created and taught by Salt Lake City community member. Am I saying that correctly? Yes, okay. And the third one is require that recruits learn the history of the diverse communities in Salt Lake City. And then the fourth piece is require sufficient budget to provide professional diversity, equity, and inclusion training in the academy. And what I suggested to Captain Morcus, recognizing, post is state certified state certification program, is that that's the floor, it's not the ceiling. So what can Salt Lake City add or offer above and beyond what the minimum requirements for post are, if it's determined that it's not sufficient to really understand how to best do this work in the city of Salt Lake? That was context, but those were the four recommendations within that. So where do you think we are? Are those essentially drafted in a way that is sufficient to leave them alone, minus Commissioner Andrew Worden's wonderful suggestion and thought process?
I'll pay $1. I'll pay the $1. I'll just pay it.
Yeah, if it was $1 per word, we'd be in business.
Oh, you can't charge me $1 per word.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you think the recommendations are, just as they're kind of drafted. Are they pretty much ready to be done with so that we can move to looking at the next set of recommendations, or do you think we should do a little wordsmithing? What are your thoughts?
Dante, does that mean that we're submitting in, or we're just gonna, shelve them and then we can look at them later on if we want to?
No, that's a great question. So I would suggest, and to Chief's point, that these, if we're done, they get submitted. There's no reason we have to wait till the end of June, I guess, is when we are done with our work, technically and officially. And so one, that's not a lot of time. And two, I think there's no reason to wait as to the Chief's point, they can start on some of these right now, or the council and mayor's office can begin to have conversations with the police department based on what we submit without waiting to the very end of everything.
And what does it mean to submit?
What does it mean? That we would submit them to council and the mayor's office as our first wave of final recommendations, with more to come.
And I think that everybody probably understands this, but just to clarify my understanding, the subcommittee's recommendations would go to full commission.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
and the full commission would determine whether they felt that they could support the subcommittee's recommendation, and then it would push forward.
Thank you.
Does that mean that we present to council and mayor's office, or is it like a paper that is a report that's sent in, or?
Oh, no, we would present. We would give it to council. They've already heard it. And I would suggest that during those work sessions now that we've been invited to, and we're hoping that you participate in, that would be a great opportunity, the opportunity to present a set of recommendations from the commission, not just from the subcommittee, but to Larry's point, from the commission as they get presented to council as a final document of initial recommendations.
And if I could, I mean, I know that Dante has presented to City Council. I've presented. This really, in my estimation, both when we talk about these recommendations at full commission and in front of council, they should be hearing the commissioners talk about recommendations. So, I mean, obviously Dante is a very eloquent spokesman, but I mean, he's representing the views of others rather than coming straight from the.
Totally agree. Mm-hmm.
And if I could just jump in one more thing that might inform you a little bit, is we're starting the budget cycle now. And so as we start to move forward, we can make more changes now than we can later. I know the council is going to want to have input on that, but as we prepare our budget now, if we get great ideas, we want to put those in our budget requests. So any kind of suggestions you can give, early on would be great.
Yeah.
What I had mentioned in the other subcommittee is when it comes to presenting to city council and so on, is that in the other one, I didn't feel like we had those recommendations solidified yet. Getting there on this one, I feel much more comfortable. And as soon as Commissioner Angie Weird puts that wording, well, I think, yeah, I'd be fully supportive of going to, and have the report. So I fully support that.
Okay.
I think we're in a good place, and then we can move into the other things we've been.
My idea was to fund and fill those detective positions as a priority. That's what I probably should have just said. And I think that, did I understand with the community piece being involved in training, was that just for the academy, or did we include that in service and ongoing training?
It says in service.
Okay.
Community-based trainers of color to be part of the academy and in-service training team.
Okay, thank you.
So let me suggest this. Since I'm guessing that the recommendations are not in front of you at this moment, look at the recommendations, email each other, right? I mean, respond to the email that I sent out with the agenda, whatever. Respond to that and say, yes, I think they're ready to go, or no, I would like this addition, change, edit to the language, so we can have this conversation. But what I would like to be able to do is next Wednesday at the full commission meeting, ask for a vote and approval of this subcommittee's recommendations. So do we think we can accomplish that? Okay, that means y'all have to email me something and email each other something. So please reply all and look at the document and let us know your thoughts.
Man, I think we're getting scolded.
I know. I'll call each of you individually and share my thoughts with you. So set some time aside. And just so you know, I can see all of you on this.
That's right.
The only thing I would add is that, expressing approval for moving something forward to the commission, you still retain the opportunity to speak at the full commission meeting about how you want to see this recommendation, implemented, or, additions to it or whatnot. So, I really hope that each will take advantage of that opportunity, not necessarily during the full commission, but sometime between now and when it gets blessed, to share their viewpoint.
Okay, and so if we can have that done by Monday, I'll give you all a weekend. I'm yelling at you with love. So please do this, and we will come on Wednesday, and we will move something forward. And I think that'll be a great example of the work that's being done, while the chief then gets to say, we've already started this. So I think that's just a great confluence of timing, right? Okay, thank you. And where are we at in the agenda? I think we'll pause on the discussion of data received from the most recent data received from Salt Lake City PD. I will say a couple things. Who was it? Josh and I, and I'm not sure who else was there. My brain isn't working. Met with Lieutenant Lepley from the Utah Highway Patrol to discuss Commissioner Shiflett's thoughts on a particular program that they have instituted in their academy around equity, bias, etc. And my notes are not in front of me, but yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. The short version is that they've instituted this process in their academy, which is new. I'm sorry, I'm technology challenged now to read my notes. But they brought in some trainers from the university and broke them, went through all of the patrol officers, 40 per time, over a period of months, obviously. And initially, it was not a training per se. There was some various concepts that were being discussed, but it was essentially a conversation with the patrol officers who he said weren't really happy that they were there in the first place. And he was pretty disgusted with a couple of his officers and their response. But what he said was that they began to hear things very differently or think about things very differently. And one of the trainers gave an example of being stopped and being asked just a litany of questions, you know, whose car is this? Where are you going? Is this your car? All those things. And she said, I was absolutely offended because you see a older Black woman driving a, Mercedes, and you're going to ask me, is it my car? And he said the officers were surprised because their response was, these are just the questions that we ask everyone. And here's why we ask these questions. And so it turned into a conversation that was eye-opening for both sides, because she didn't know everybody got asked those same questions. And the officers didn't know that people would be offended or why they would be offended by getting those questions asked. And so what it did, he said, was developed a level of respect and comfort level that didn't exist before they ever had training. I mean, they described concepts and other things, but just hearing some of those examples, both back and forth, made a huge difference. Because as I'm sure the chief or the previous police on this call will tell you, cops don't want to hear from somebody who hasn't been a cop, because the assumption is how do you tell me how to do my job, because you've never had to do what I do. And so it just broke down that initial barrier. And now the next wave of those in-service trainings will be much more in-depth content, et cetera, et cetera. But he said he was just so pleasantly shocked and surprised by the way it went. So just a thought on other programs and training out there that are happening that are apparently seemingly making a difference, at least in the level of understanding of the officers on why their impact can be detrimental, or I won't say traumatic, but can be hard for certain communities because they've never thought about those things. Which is why also I think the idea and the recommendation of having to learn about the Salt Lake City communities of color for recruits and trainers and those in the academy is absolutely crucial. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that and see if there's some benefit to really hearing from them again, or having them have a conversation with the commission or that kind of thing. But just wanted to share that with you. It just seemed like they were really moving in the right direction. Okay. And I think that's all on this agenda, and we're not doing too bad after being 20 minutes late because of Commissioner Prospero. Anything else?
Thanks, Davina and Anapesi, dropping a dime on me. How about Steve? He was dabba, 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 dabba. And he got here like, what, 5 minutes ago.
I already told you that I told Josh he was going to get a thank you text from Dante for keeping me over there an extra half hour.
I think my mom got the same text too.
Right.
Really happy with what we've been doing. Thanks, Dante. I just want to say, man, I've been really happy with, especially what's going on, and thanks, Chief, for pushing that. Just pushing. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting. Very happy with that.
Great. Okay. Well, I truly appreciate your engagement and all the work you're doing. And we will just keep doing what we do. I know I say that all the time. We'll just keep doing what we do because you have no idea how much sometimes gratifying this is for me because I ride the roller coaster of, is this really making a difference? In the last couple of days, I've been asking myself that question because you have no idea some of the engagements I've had to have. But I truly appreciate this, and it really does appear that we are making a difference, and I just thank you for that. So on that happy note, I will give you back the rest of your evening, and I will expect to see that email by Monday from each and every one of you and look forward to hearing from you. Okay.
Larry's fault.
I'm sorry, what?
Remember, it's Larry's fault. Anything
Oh,
is Larry's fault.
okay.
Catch
I'll
y'all
keep that in
later.
mind. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for putting up with my long-windedness. I'll see you guys next time.
All right. Stay safe out there.